Welcome to Bigfoot
and the Bunny.
This is a couple's journey into the mysterious,
the unknown, and the paranormal.
I'm your host, Chris Carr.
And I'm your host, Kristen Johnson.
Together we are Bigfoot and the Bunny.
And we're live. Welcome to Bigfoot and the Bunny. Happy Saturday, folks.
Happy Saturday.
And today is a big day, and I just want to let you guys know I've got a crazy sore throat today. So if I sound scratchy, don't mind it. Kristen has not been feeling well for a while. You actually missed your first show for being sick this Thursday. When you talked to Nathaniel Gillis,
I apologize for that.
We did get through it, and it was a cool show. And you got to mute that.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
My computer had a total mental breakdown. I was like, what the?
Did right before we go live. It goes crazy. And which is also the reason why we were not at Ocean State Paracon today.
Got it. I got it. Thank you.
Nope. Still going. And, we did want to get over there, see Ken DaCosta, Andrea Perrin, who was our guest last week on Bigfoot and the Bunny. Hey, Andrea, and I know she was speaking today, and we had a bunch of friends we wanted to hang out with, and we just were not feeling up to it. So sorry, guys, but do check out those shows in archives of whatever platform you're watching us on. Andrea's interview with us set a few personal records as well as and stuff. That was really cool. So we really appreciate that, and she was wonderful to talk to. We of course got a good show for you today, but we want to talk about a couple quick things first.
Michelle Freed.
Oh yes, remote viewing. If you are looking to have something remote viewed, found, or learn remote viewing, I recommend you reach out to our friend Michelle at butterflyeffectcenter.com. Be it a missing person, a missing wedding ring, or something you're looking for. She and her team of remote viewers can help you find it. If you're interested in learning how to remote view, that's a great place to go. And let her know Bigfoot and the Bunny sent you. So plug. We sent you over there. Butterflyeffectcenter.com. She's wonderful. She's great. We love Michelle. And that's what we want to get into a couple of things.
I was going to say, I was watching, I love Bela Lugosi, and I was watching one of his movies the other night, and it's called The Ape Man. And it was done in 1943. Right. And his sister was in the movie that portrayed his sister. He called her a ghost hunter. Now, this was back in 1943. So I said to Chris, I called him, and I was like, oh my God, they said ghost hunter. And again, 1943. And
this is fascinating, right? Yeah. Because obviously the Ghost Hunters TV series, a lot of our watchers, are very familiar with, and this is no offense to Grant and, and everyone in the team and Jason Hawes. But I don't personally like that term, because I don't feel like hunting is really the appropriate word of ghosts when we're talking about spirits of, say, children or past loved ones.
Right.
And also we've had enough experience go arounds with this to know that they can hunt you. So, given this information, I don't love that term in particular, but it's something we all use, and it's in the vernacular, and we understand, of course,
right,
but we didn't realize it was such an old term.
Right. So the thing is, we looked into the history. I was delving into it, and seriously cannot find who coined the term ghost hunter. So we were wondering if anybody out there and listening in our audience knows who coined the term ghost hunter
when it was first used. Dr. Google did not help us very much with this. We suspect it started during the spiritualist movement.
No, it was before that. It was in the 1700s.
1700s. Okay, 18th century.
And and the spiritual movement started with those two sisters,
the Fox sisters. Yes. And then later
that was from 1848 until the middle of the 1900s. So 1700s, and cannot figure out who said ghost hunter.
Yeah.
So that's our wrap.
Who first said it, who coined it. If you guys know, out there in chat,
let us
you end up
know.
watching us, let us know if you have some insight on that, because we're very curious. You know, we didn't realize it was like used back then, or certainly in a Bela Lugosi movie. So
yeah, love him.
Very interesting, right?
Hello, Courtney Peterson.
Hey there, Michelle Millions. Karen Antelope. Hey, hi from Anchorage, Alaska. Well, that's cool. And yeah, we got some people out there already saying hello. That's awesome. Hey, Courtney.
Love our pun family.
We sure do.
Yes,
we sure do.
So also, I wanted to speak about the mysterious booms that have been happening for years. We'll come to find out, it just happened over my town Wednesday night, and also other parts of Massachusetts.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. The mysterious booms. Okay, so if you go to YouTube and you type in the search of mysterious booms, you just put that in as a search, you're going to get like years of information coming back, news stories, different things. And lately they've been popping up in the news with more frequency, and even locally. About a month ago in New Hampshire, northern Massachusetts, there was a whole lot of these things. They are not showing up on seismographs.
Nope.
But they will. The booms are loud enough to like rattle your house, rattle your windows, knock something off a shelf. People are reporting this phenomena occurring. And it's not just relegated to New England where we're from, but it's all over the country.
It's all over the world, right?
And
it just so happens
we haven't heard a good explanation, right? Like
No.
they were talking about meteor showers and, meteors like breaking through the atmosphere, maybe causing these things, but nobody seems to know. It seems like something they would know, right? Like if there's a meteors coming down and making everything go boom. I think they would know that.
Some people say it comes from the ground. That's where they think that it's coming from. But most people say it comes from the air, like you were saying, like Sonic or Mach.
It's like, hello, hey mom, hey dad.
Hi,
from the Car
Mr.
family.
and Mrs. Carr.
I love that my parents watch this show.
I know, right?
Cool.
Yeah. So it just, I don't know. It just baffles us.
Yeah,
well. So if anybody has
all over the world, that's right. That's right.
For decades. So if you have any experience with that, if you know a lot of things, please let us know.
Yeah.
You could Gmail us too at www.
Don't Gmail to the website.
Bigfoot and the Bunny.
See, we're not feeling 100%.
I'm not. You're right.
It's Bigfoot and the Bunny at gmail.com.
So sorry.
But that's all right. Let us know. Or, you can always find us on Facebook, wherever you're watching us, facebook.com/Bigfoot and the Bunny.
It's also a great question.
Let us know
for our guests.
Networks that we're on. And hey, Robert Honings, how you doing?
Hi, Robert. I haven't seen you in a while. Please tell Bridget we said hello.
Absolutely. And let me get a little information up here.
Getting out the bio. Checking out
we have a wonderful guest for you this week. Her name is Lindsey Scharmyn. She's an experiencer of other realms via astral travel, dreamwalking, visions, interactions with other dimensional entities, a shaman, a spiritual guide, and teacher for others. She's going to come on to discuss how she performs cleansings, blessings, spiritual reclamation, and discuss her tarot journey, including a severe entity attachment. Now, that's a subject that really interests me, is entity attachments, and I can't wait to dig into this. And personal shamanic encounters of a profound nature, including, and I like this word, wasn't familiar with this word, synchro-mystic travels.
Oh, I love that word. Yes.
Life leading to her purpose. Let's get her on right now.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello.
Welcome to Bigfoot and the Bunny, Lindsey Scharmyn. How are you?
I am so good. It's really nice to be here with you, Chris, and Kristen, for your whole audience. And I'm glad that you're invited me here today to chat about all these things. It's going to be fun.
Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. So you have quite a story, and you are into some really, really cool stuff.
Absolutely.
How did you get involved in this kind of paranormal world of astral travel and shamanic journeys? Where does this begin?
It all just happened to me. I usually peg the start as the tarot experience that led to a demonic attachment. But really it was before then I was always, in touch with, and I guess now I understand it to be like channeling and communicating with other entities. And when you're a child and you're doing things like that, it doesn't seem like anything because everything in the world is new. And you don't know how other people experience reality, So yeah, so it took me a long time to even really understand that as a child, I was communicating with trees and plants and animals and,
That's wonderful.
clouds, like everything that exists. And then, that slowly gets sort of trained out of us as we grow up. We're not, if we bring up like, oh, this and this happened, our parents are like, that's not real. You're just imagining things. You have such an overactive imagination. And
Go back to bed.
Yep.
Yeah,
and you get dismissed. And then you start to learn like, oh, those things aren't something I should pay attention to. And it just starts to ebb out of your, I guess, natural abilities. And I really believe that all children, especially if they're, really healthy and unharmed, are going to have these abilities, and that they're going to most likely lose these abilities in the same ways that most of us do. But I was fortunate, I guess, in that I had reintroduction into some of these things via, again, tarot and a demonic entity attachment, and also, some really paranormal poltergeist-like activity that went along with that as well. And at the same time, around the same time, I was starting to astral travel. I didn't know what that was. And I was starting to have what I now feel are probably abductions. And I didn't know what that was. And I had what I believe are implants, and I didn't know what those were. And there was a lot going on. And it all kind of happened at once. But I usually tell the tarot story as sort of the start because it's easier for people to grasp.
Well, I totally agree with you. And I just want to note that a lot of the people we talk to, and this is true of ourselves, that have this kind of lifelong interest in the paranormal, these esoteric subjects, did have childhood, somewhat dramatic experiences usually happen to them. And of course, the parents don't believe you.
Didn't believe us.
Go, like I said, go back to bed or whatever it is. They know, they dismiss it.
Like you said, it's just your imagination.
Eventually, you start to dismiss it. But, my own memories, and I know Kristen, this is true of Kristen as well, are like super clear of our childhood, traumas, if you will, with the paranormal. And they weren't like nice things, She dealt with shadow figures that had poltergeist activities. I had this thing with clowns. I'm not even going to get into it. I've talked about it on the show before, but it was horrible, and I always wanted to know why. So what happened with you?
Yeah, I didn't have those really negative experiences. I seem to have been protected for a time, at least as a child. I had other traumatic experiences from life and growing up in poverty, and an alcoholic father who died when I was young. So I do have trauma in common. And it does seem in my own experiences that people have trauma and then are also then open or more connected with these types of things. So it is really interesting to note that. But my boyfriend actually had the same sort of really negative attacks all through childhood, and at the same, it's interesting to me. Like, I can't really understand how a child would be attacked so directly with these negative and malevolent images and beings and dreams and experiences, because it doesn't make sense spiritually or emotionally or otherwise. But I've started to understand that a lot of us come into this world from our previous lives with a lot of attachments and karma, or also familial attachments that were sort of came in ready to help deal with. And so I think that plays a role in it, at least why that happens to some people and why it doesn't happen to other people. And it still feels unfair. And it's still, you can't, I don't know. But I at least can kind of understand why, where the attachments are coming from when I look at it that way. But for myself, I'm not sure. My father was in the military, and sometimes military parentage leads to sort of especially abduction experiences often. But he wasn't like a high up or like a general or any sort of secret or special ops. So usually it's more that sort of thing. And And so I don't know what role, if any, that played in it either. But basically, I went one night to a slumber party, and I was maybe about 14 or 15 or so. I don't really have a very clear memory of date. I'm really bad with time. Like, it just doesn't. I
That's
don't
no
have.
worries. I understand why we're the
We
same way,
do.
and I love that term slumber party because
Yeah.
slumber refers to sleep, and that's like the last thing kids do at slumber parties.
Yeah. That's true. Well, and I was in a phase of sobriety, and because I had a lot of drug abuse and alcohol abuse when I was very young, because of my trauma and other things. And so this was a period of time where I was being sober, and I was at this slumber party with these sober group of young girls. We were all hanging out together, and the oldest one was actually many of the girls their sponsor. So she was 18 at least. You have to be 18 to be a sponsor. And she had brought tarot cards to our slumber party, and I had never really had any interaction with them at all. You know, I always say maybe I saw some
What
in.
do you do?
What's that?
Don't drink, don't smoke. What do you do? I guess it's tarot cards.
Adam, is that
Adam Man, right?
Adam, yeah.
Sorry, I apologize.
It's totally fine. Yeah, and so apparently you do tarot, and I, but I didn't know, you know, and like I always say, maybe I saw it in movies or a show or something once or twice, but I didn't really have like an idea of what this was. And for anyone really young out there, the internet didn't exist, so I had really no understanding of things like this. They weren't in my life. So when she was doing tarot readings for people, I started to put it together. I'm like, oh, it's like a fortune telling thing, you know, like, I guess that's what this is. It's like a card game for fortune telling. And I didn't really, I always kind of just stand back a bit and watch. And so I didn't really like even really want to try it. But then at the end, I was like the last person, and she was like, you have to do it. And everyone's like, yeah, you have to do it. And I'm like, oh, whatever. It's like a card game, right? So I did it. And I'll say, as far as I know, no one else there that night got any sort of attachment. But I sat down to do the reading. And the way that this girl did her readings is really inappropriate and dangerous, as I became painfully aware. But I had no idea at the time that it could be. So I don't suggest this to anyone. But what she did was she asked a spirit to come and guide the reading. Every time she did a reading, she asked a spirit to come and guide the reading. She didn't delineate what kind of spirit or who or where, nothing at all. Just any spirit, just come guide the reading. So that was the fatal flaw that I didn't know. And so we did this reading, and the reading was really scary for her, which then was scary for me because none of the other readings were scary for her. And I didn't understand why. But now, having read tarot for many, many years, I understand that as she's flipping over each card, every single card in a 10-card reading was a major arcana. And major arcana is only 22 cards out of 76. Anyways, however many cards.
Right.
And so it's not likely that, you know, in a general reading, people get maybe 2 or 3 major arcana sometimes, maybe a little more, a little less. But every single card was major arcana. Every single card was major arcana. Every single card, and every single card was reversed. And in any given reading, of course, you have a 50% probability you're going to get a pretty even mix of upright and reverse for the most part. And it doesn't always happen, but those are statistics, right?
And being reversed, I mean, the card was laid upside down, and if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, would mean the opposite of what it would mean if it was right side up.
It's not always exactly opposite, but it's at least indicative of like a shift or a twist or a blockage of some kind of the upright, you know, more flowing and aligned energy of it. It can be kind of opposite, just depending on how it is sitting. But so yeah, they're all of them would indicate some sort of trouble, strife, blockage, or negativity, right? And so I had 100% of them were major arcana, which is massive and huge no matter what reading you're doing, and 100% of them were reversed, which is massive and huge no matter what reading you're doing.
Right. So
by the 10th card, she was like, I don't even know what this is or what you are, or like what's going on. Or she's like freaking out. And I'm like, wow, it's just like a card game, but I guess it's a really big deal. Like I didn't know anything about it. But I kind of got like the hook. I was like, that was really weird and interesting. And I kind of want to learn like how to do that myself. So I went out and I bought the exact same deck which is the deck everyone can see in this background right here. I still have it today. It's a different deck, but it's the same type of deck.
That's a very cool picture, and it actually comes from your website, which for the people that get this in audio only and don't see the ticker, going across the bottom is rogueways.org. And we will mention that several more times before we're done.
Yes.
But,
Thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
It's
I always
awesome picture. Yeah.
I always have to tell this story and then clarify why I still do tarot afterwards, because it's a terrifying story. So I started to go about actually doing readings for people, and I did it the same way she did it, because that was the only experience of tarot I ever had to go off of. So I always invited a spirit to come guide the reading. And I was like spot on all the time in ways that would freak people out when I was giving them a reading. They're like, how could you know that? How would you know this? Like, how do the cards know this? And so I got sort of a reputation as the tarot reader in our school, in our small town. And that there's a lot of stories I could tell with that too. But to stick on this story, as time went on, I again started having poltergeist activity too. I did not connect that in any way to doing tarot readings because I had no reason to. And I also started having sleep paralysis, which I also didn't connect to anything because I had no reason to. And the poltergeist activity for me was, I was always just explaining it away because I'm a very rational person, actually, and I'm a very skeptical person, actually, and I need a lot of evidence and a lot of thought to decide that something is especially abnormal or paranormal, right?
That's
and so
basically what our brains are trained to do, debunk. And yeah. Oh, wow, yeah.
We want to rationalize things away, and of course, poltergeist. German for noisy ghost, but we all know what that means, and that's where some kind of entity is moving things about your house.
Yes.
In a malevolent
throwing things.
Yeah. So I started having things like pop off tables and land in front of me and fall off walls and like all of this stuff. And the one that finally sort of started to scare me was this flashlight that was plugged into the wall, and it was a rechargeable flashlight. But to turn the flashlight on, you had to take it out of the wall. You had to depress a button that wasn't the on button. It's just the button that you have to depress in order to turn the plug in all the way back in. It has to click and latch back into the unit, and then you can press the on button and it will work. And before that, it won't work. This is just like how it worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that flashlight at one point just dropped in front of me and turned on. And I didn't, again, really think that much of it. I was like, things fall, whatever. But as I picked it up, I realized that was all the way back inside. Someone had to have depressed it and clicked it all in one swift movement as it fell, which isn't even possible.
Right. The physics doesn't seem to line up, but yet it happened, and you have the experience.
So I dropped that and ran out of the house and got in a car and drove away. I was like, that's not real. That can't happen.
No, that's messed up.
Yeah, makes an impression, right?
does.
So you have these experiences. Your mind can't put it together.
Right.
So
and I started to, at that moment, I was like, wait, a lot of things have been falling. Like a lot of things have been moving in weird ways. And I was like, what if something like a ghost or something is in the house? Like, that's weird. And then I just probably went and got high and did a tarot reading or something, So I, again, also was having sleep paralysis this whole time. That's also very scary for anyone who hasn't had it. And and it all came to a head and a, climax when I was on the computer one night. My dog was beneath me and on the desk, and I was home alone, and it was, late evening or nighttime. And I just felt like someone was behind me, and I was like, that's really weird because no one's behind me. And that feeling, you can't explain it anyway. I don't know why we even get it, So it's already, I'm like, well, I'm just tripping, right? There's nothing. But I really felt like someone was behind. I kept feeling that. And I'm like, this is getting weird. Like, why do I keep having this persistent feeling? And I kept looking to see, and no one was there. And then I started realizing, like, I felt uneasy and uncomfortable, and it was cold. And I was like, this is so weird. Like, I must just be really tripping out. I don't understand. Then my dog gets up from sleep, and he stands up, and he looks at the exact area where behind me I felt like something was staring at me, and he starts growling at it, and the hackles on his neck go up. And I always have to point out that this dog, lots of dogs growl from here and there and time to time, and dangerous thing. This dog had never, and I'm literally serious, that he had never growled in his life once.
That must have freaked you out so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. To hear this dog I've known for over a decade growling, I was like, oh my God. And then it was confirmation too. Like there is something there. There's something there, and it is bad. It's not a good thing.
No. Animals are obviously attuned to these things. Or we wouldn't have shows like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
I'm joking when I say that, but you know, we're cat owners, and I mean, our cats are attuned to things that are just not within our five senses or six or whatever we want to say to pick up at times, because they just know.
Optical.
Yeah. So
they're really
be freaky.
They're really in tune, and it was terrifying. So I again ran, because that's all you know how to do from the paranormal at this point, especially. And I got under my covers.
Handbook.
Yeah. The covers of the handbook too, right? If you're under your covers, you're safe.
Yeah, sure.
So I was hiding in my bed, and my dog was with me, and it couldn't have been that night. So it must have been like the next night or the night after. It happened really quickly, at least in succession. And nothing else happened that night. But very soon after, within a day or two, I was sleeping. And I had sleep paralysis again for like the 100,000th time. And I had this whole mantra that I had learned from a shamanic woman at a sweat lodge. That was totally random story as well, which my whole life is just random synchronicities like this. But she had taught me this, when you're in this, just say a mantra and just, I'm safe, I'm protected, I'm good, and it'll be over soon. And just like keep telling yourself that until you can move again and it's over. And that was really helpful. So I was doing that again. And then I realized that I could see everything. And I was like, oh, it's over. I must be awake. And then I realized, no, I still can't move. And I was like, how can I see and I can't move? My eyes are open. But then I realized I could see in 360 degrees.
Wow.
In every direction, any direction I wanted to see, I could see just by thinking of it. And I was like, well, that's really weird. Like, what is that? I was like, this is a really detailed dream, I guess. But I had never dreamed while sleep paralysis before. So I didn't understand out-of-body experiences at this time. I didn't understand astral travel. So I had no idea what was going on. But my whole room was in perfect detail. Everything was in real time. And then I realized I could hear the TV in the other room. Someone was watching TV and I could hear it. And I was like, oh, this is real life. Like, this is happening right now. Yeah. And then I felt that same feeling of somebody's watching me or coming or something dreadful is, around me. And then I see come through my door of black mist, but not mist, like concentrated, fully black, light couldn't penetrate it, form, clearly intelligent because it's moving. And I realized, oh God, like that's the thing that was behind me the other night. That's the thing my dog growled at. As I'm realizing this, my dog comes to the door and starts whining and scratching in real life. And I'm like, oh my God, something really weird is happening. Like I can't move. I can see, I can perceive reality. My eyes aren't open though. And I can see now because in this realm, you can see these things more easily, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And not understanding that really, but starting to understand that something really bad was happening. And, and so I was staring at it, and then as I was feeling like, oh my God, this is so bad. What am I going to do? This is so bad. It kind of shape shifted and morphed into the form of a small girl child.
Oh, there we go. It's stepping into roles.
Into roles. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something we talk about a lot.
Yes. So, and I know that it plucked it straight from my brain because I had an imaginary friend who was a small blonde girl who looked exactly the same.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah, we really need to go. I want you to get through your story, but we need to come back, break down a couple of these things because they are hot
I have a couple of questions as well
for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so it clearly knew my thoughts and even my past, right? To have plucked that image out. But at the time I wasn't thinking that. I was just thinking, oh, it's actually a little girl. I was like, I've just been scared because I don't know what it is, or and I'm putting together all these poltergeist things are the same thing, and the sleep paralysis is connected, and then this entity, and then I'm like, oh, well, if it's just a little girl ghost, that's not bad, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
Right? So there's that first kind of attack, I feel like, that it is pretending to be this girl. Then the other thing is like an ego conceit that it played off of mine, right? Because in my head, all of a sudden I was like, oh, I know this little girl ghost needs to go to heaven and I'm special and I can help her go to heaven. And that's what's going on here. This whole thing has been a huge misunderstanding. Again, you know, because that feels nice to feel like you might be special or to be recognized or whatever.
Just to help, you know, your heart.
Yeah,
Absolutely. We spend a lot of time in our own brains and we're always looking for some kind of validation of our existence.
Sure.
exactly. Especially when you're a teenager, you really want to feel special and seen. So it, again, it's a crafted attack that's intentional and intelligent. So I'm sitting there saying, oh, this is this young girl, I can help her go to heaven or whatever, and like this is actually really cool. And something luckily in my mind, very clearly, not my own thoughts, very loudly and clearly said, that's just what it wants you to think. And I was like, ooh, like I got like the equivalent of chills in the astral. I knew that was true instantly. And then I thought, well, I'm screwed then, because if it's not a little girl ghost and it is this black evil thing, like what is it doing in my room and what does it want? And this is all happening in like microseconds, you know?
Yeah.
And it's, it heard that voice as well and knew, or at least knew my response to that voice. And so it knew its time was up, the gig was up. And so it like leapt at me. It was like rushing towards me. It's no longer a little girl. It was just black
Mist
like again.
Mist, yes.
And it's very nefarious too.
Very dark.
That every sense that you could have, which is an enhanced sense, was saying this is pure evil.
Yeah,
Pure
and that's
evil.
crazy that it just went right
Because
towards you really fast.
That is the feeling in astral that when you get an idea that something is not good, you know it on a lot of levels. Like it's more frightening. It's not like going to see a horror movie. It frightens you in a whole new way.
Oh yeah, because it's existential threat. Like you're like, do I survive this if I don't do this right? Like, and it's, I don't know what I was gonna say with that, but it did leap at me, and I guess I just didn't. I had no idea what to do, and so my I was gonna say again, we're trained out of trusting our senses. So when you feel like somebody's watching you, you feel like something's bad, like we have all of these experiences in life where we're pushed through anyway. Oh no, you just have to do it anyway. Like you just have to trust that teacher and you just have to be in this class and you just have to go to your uncles or whatever it is, right? And we're like, oh, I guess my senses are wrong then and I don't need to pay attention to those too. So there's every reason why these things can have successful attacks upon people, even though 100% of us are aware. All of us would feel that and go, oh, that's not good. You know, it's not a special person that can feel that. It's 100% of people can feel it if they're still attuned to that and trusting it. But anyways, it's hitting, you know, it's about to hit me. And I just do the only thing I can think of doing, which is saying, dear God, help me. And I had never really prayed since I had become a young teenage pseudo adult, right? So when I was little, we had church and I had that, but I hadn't for years. In fact, I had believed God was not real and that love didn't exist and all these dark things because of my trauma and all, you know, my dad dying and all this stuff. So it was the first time I had called on God probably in my whole life. And I just said, dear God, help me. And literally a shield appeared in front of me. It was like around me, I guess, all the way around me, I'm sure. But I just saw it form in front of me in a nanosecond. It was like a silvery clear shield. And that thing, it formed right in time because it formed and that thing smacked into it. Like it wasn't expecting to be stopped.
Wow.
And when it smacked into it, when it realized that it had been stopped, there was a sound that I could perceive that was not happening in the real world, like the TV, but was happening in this astral realm. And I could see the difference and, or hear the difference. And it sounded like everything negative and evil that you could think of all combined into one crazy cacophony. Like I always say, it's like scrunching metal and like explosions and like screaming people and lightning, like all of it, like at one time as a scream coming from it.
Wow.
And that was maybe the scariest part, actually, because I was like, because it was happening like this close, you know, like right in front of my face.
Right.
Sure.
Oh.
And then I just kept saying, God help me, God help me, God help me. Because I was like, what if the shield disappears? I just have to keep saying this and like my mantras, you know, and I finally could wiggle a finger and I could finally wake up and get up, and I ran from the room, and my dog was like so happy to see me alive. And I ran into my mom's bed this time and got under her covers with her. And she was so tired. She just like didn't even notice. But I just cowered there the rest of the night, you know, thinking, well, I've gone insane, like completely insane. Because this can't happen. Like, this isn't a real thing. This is movie stuff. Like, I clearly don't have touch with reality anymore. And, you know, but I had those few things of confirmation, like that I could hear the TV and that my dog growled and like that my dog was whining at the door. So it bothered me, but I was like, no, I'm insane. I've gone completely insane. So I went to school the next morning after a night of just dreadful images filling my head, because I think this thing couldn't get in me or do whatever it wanted to do to me, but it could still like project a lot of horrifying negativity into my mind, my imagination. And so scenes that I would never even have had access to. There's no movie that even has as disgusting filth as I was seeing. So again, I'm like, well, I'm crazy, you know? And so at school the next day, I walked in, and I always point out, even though some people think my drug use might detract from my story and my believability, I always point out that I had done a lot of drugs at this point. And so I'd shown up to school on a lot of drugs and hungover from a lot of drugs, and after 3-day benders from a lot of drugs. And still no one had ever treated me like they did that morning. After all of that, like they'd seen me in the worst states possible. And I walked in that morning, and people would look at me and go, oh my God, what's wrong with you? Like, did your dog die? Did someone die? And I'm like, no, nothing happened. Like, nothing's wrong with me. And then the next person I'd see go, whoa, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? I'm like, yes, I'm okay. Like, why is everyone doing this? And then by the time the third or fourth person did that, I was like, I can't do this all day. Like, something's clearly like around me or on me or in me, or like I'm possessed. I don't know what's happening. I'm freaking out. But now I have all this confirmation, because now all these people having no idea what happened to me last night are asking me like, what's wrong with me? They can see it and they can feel it.
Right.
So that really freaked me out too. And finally I was like, I can't pretend this isn't happening anymore. Like, I'm not crazy. Something is happening. And so the only people I knew who, you know, understood or had ever even talked about anything that would be remotely like this was my very, very, very fundamentalist Christian friends' parents. And they had talked about demons and all these things. And they're the only people I'd ever heard talk about those things as though they're real, you know, and not just some superstition.
The first people you want to talk to when you're high.
Yeah. So I called them on the payphone outside the school, and I asked them if I could come over. And so I guess I was 16 by this point, at least, because I could drive. And so they said, yeah, come right over. Like they were expecting me, like they had been waiting for a long time for me to break down, I think. So I drove over there, and I told them the story, and they're like, oh yeah, you're under demonic attack. Just like that's just a normal thing that happens in their world.
Sure, yeah.
Like, we're out of milk, or
yeah. So it's totally plain. I'm like, okay, well, if that's true, like, what do I do about it? And they're like, oh, it's really easy, actually. You just invite Jesus into your heart. I'm like, okay, when? How? Where do we do this?
How's that work?
Yeah. They're like, do it. You just
what happened? How does that work?
They're like, yeah, you just say this prayer, just copy it. We'll just follow after us and we'll say it with you. And I'm like, okay. So I'll do anything at this point. So I say this prayer. It's very simple. It's something like, Jesus, please come into my heart and my life. Something like that, at least. And as I'm saying the words, just from head to toe, complete relaxation and goodness and peace just filled me. And I was like, wow, like I had no idea how crappy things had been before I said this prayer. You know, like you realize like how dark it was and what was going on in my mind and my mood and my emotion, and all of this was being manipulated by this energy or this entity. And then I had this peace finally. you know, not just after that night. That night was horrible. Like the past 12 hours or whatever before then had been the worst of it. But for how many months actually that it had been building, and I didn't realize how dark and how bad it was and how much it affected me until that moment. I was amazed because I was not a Christian, and I am still not what people would technically call a Christian. But very clearly Jesus's name and Jesus's power, whatever that is super effective.
Wow.
Now, do you think part of that was just the power of saying no? Because there is some power in this, and at least in our experience, there is something to saying you must leave. Just leave our house without a lot of dogma attached or archangels or whatever. Although that's a whole nother thing, and you know, whatever motivates you, but to tell something to go away sometimes does seem to be almost like a higher law, and they almost have to obey that.
Yes, they absolutely have to obey that. And they're really good at tricking people into believing that they don't have to obey that in many ways. And then people's belief that they don't have to will like often let them back in. So it gets tricky. But it is absolutely true that you have a free will and they don't. And so you can tell them to leave, and that is a huge power. And another aspect of it is just this concept. I don't know if you're familiar with Rupert Sheldrake's idea of morphogenetic fields.
No. Please do tell.
It's just this concept that, you know, every time you have a thought or even an action or a feeling, you're creating, right? Their energy is coming out from you in any of those things.
Yes.
And it's all a vibration, and it's all, you know,
Frequency.
cymatics and frequency, right? So every time you say, this is why people have logos and brands too. Every time you see Pepsi, you have an emotional response, you think of it, you visualize it, you give it all this attention. Now Pepsi's even stronger. Well, Jesus is thousands of years old, and how many people have put their thoughts and their feelings and their genuine emotion and all of this energy into the energy that we call Jesus, and it's super good and pure. It's all really good and pure
and
stuff.
Advertising, right? Like, I mean, mentioned Pepsi, or having a Coca-Cola sign on your wall. You might have a crucifix on your wall, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially, I'm sorry, when you go to church and everybody's doing that, everybody's energy is all together, and that makes it even more powerful.
Yes, the group for sure. So the group, icons, and all of this, and it's again really genuine emotion, and people will cry and joy for Jesus. Like there's like a lot, and this is for thousands of years. So it can be any energy or entity has the same quality, right? So if it's Buddha, or if it's, you know, Guan Yin, or like any of these entities from all around the world, they have the same. They have all these people and all this time they've been putting in this energy and this emotion and this thought into that quality and that energy. And so if it's a protective, powerful, beautiful, pure energy, you can use that like armor.
Shield, force field, like you were saying, the shield.
Yes, exactly. God is another, right? And it could be that Jesus and Buddha and all these things are actually real too, you know, and I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying at the very least, I understand the concept of the morphogenetic field, and that is the minimum of what's happening when these things actually are very effective.
Yeah, agreed. And really, I think any kind of religious icon can exist if people think about it, right?
Yep.
I mean, we're true believers in that thoughts are energy, and actually that energy may be the very thing that attracts these other entities to us.
Yeah. My understanding at this point is that, you know, again, since I was a child, I had this strong connection to whatever you want to call source, or, you know, understandings that seem beyond physical material acceptability, and other skills too that you might call empathic or psychic. And so, you know, my having seen now what that looks like in like a psychic sort of, or ceremonial sort of space, or a shamanic sort of space, it's like a bright burning flame amidst a really dark sea of minor flickers. So the entities that can feed off of our energies and thoughts and emotions and all of this, they like really like me because I'm a really good food source. And
emotions seem to be like
Yeah.
almost the language of a spirit communication in so many ways. I mean, symbiology and emotions and stuff seems to be a lot of the ways that they actually communicate as opposed to say, hi, I'm coming to possess you. You're gonna
Right.
get this feeling of like dread or something, or you're feeling suffocated or something like that. And if you talk about
Especially-
like, say, old Hag Syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Or the old
This
hag,
is
and
sleep
I actually had this experience of meeting the old hag before I knew that existed, and it was terrifying, and I couldn't get away from it. And the sleep paralysis can play a role. My daughter experiences sleep paralysis often. She's 22, and she's dealing with this, and she has some astral experiences. I know I felt it. I know what you mean, and you just feel helpless, and you cannot move, and you're just stuck, and everything in you that sees, the quote unquote entity thinks it is the darkest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And it's frightening. It's terrifying.
Like you said, it has an ego and
terrifying, right?
It is.
It's not the kind of thing of like human to human contact where, I don't know, you're frightened by somebody for whatever reason. It's terrifying on a spiritual level.
yes.
You can feel it, especially being empathic. Empaths like really, they absorb it even more.
So this happens to you, but it goes on after you've woken up. So I think for most people, you might have this the night terror, the experience of some kind of dark entity, and like I can remember having childhood experiences where it could just be this red light I saw in the hallway outside of my bedroom that didn't exist, but I knew what it was, and it would just scare the crap out of me. I'd snap back into my body, and that was it. Like I was going good.
Yeah.
Once I was back in the body, the red light's gone. I'm no longer having any issues on the astral plane, but at the time it seemed frightening. But for you, this continued to go on. You needed help. You talked to some religious folk. You told it to go away, and somehow and this empowered you to actually make something leave in real time in our 3D physical meat bag existence.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I did.
Did it go away like permanently, or did it come back?
No. Yeah, no, my feeling of my inner body, my inner experience was peaceful, and I had Jesus within me. So that was good. But the entity was still around, and they even explained to me, you have to go home now, and you have to clear your house, and you have to do it by yourself for some reason. I'm like, oh, thanks, guys. And do it like this. And the way they explained it to me, I did that. But years later, when I'm learning, shamanic practices and different things, I'm like, this is exactly the same as their Christian idea of how to do all of these traditions around the world. In fact, every single tradition I've looked at has the exact same basic principles involved in the banishment of an entity, or the invitation of a positive ally and entity. So it's really interesting that even Christianity, which we often poo-poo and think is really, I don't know, outdated or like old or just control or whatever we often sometimes can think about Christianity, they've got the same mystic components as every other,
they sure do.
Oh, yes.
They have a whole system of sorcery.
Yeah.
Sorcery. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. But it's what, you believe in. And I think that belief contributes to the effect.
That's the thing. If you really believe that and you know it, then it's true. So I did banish this entity. I went home and I followed the steps and I did this. And the last step was to burn the tarot cards, because that was its physical portal sort of attachment that I had invited it through, right?
Close the door.
Close the door. So I went out to burn these, and I never had like a harder time burning anything in my life. The wind picked up very strongly, and it wasn't just that the wind picked up strongly and like sticks were flying, and they all seemed to be flying right at me, and like pine cones and things. And that was really scary. But then I realized partway through, as I'm like trying to burn these tarot cards in the wind, that none of the other trees in the other properties nearby were blowing at all. But the trees on my property were like shaking and like throwing themselves around. So I'm like, like this thing really doesn't want me to do this. And I could feel it like hovering around me and trying to stop me. And it was just really, really intense. Actually, that was maybe the most terrifying, because I think there's something scary and about claiming your power as well, and like It's like a responsibility you don't necessarily want to take, because you're like, well, now for the rest of my life, I have to acknowledge that these things happen and that I have to do something about it. And that, I don't know, there's something in that was almost hard too, on like an internal struggle level, but I did it and I burned those cards and it was gone. I didn't have any more poltergeist. I didn't have any more sleep paralysis ever again. I've never had sleep paralysis again.
Wow.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
And other entities have come to mess with me from time to time, and even scarier things than this have actually happened to me way after this.
Scarier than that, my goodness.
Yeah. But I have understood now too that each step I sort of take on this path has brought me more into learning about spiritual work and about myself as a spiritual being and about the powers that we do have, and how to help others through this as well. So now that's, part of what I do as a spiritual teacher and mystic healer and practitioner is I help people detach and, get these things off of and away from them, and also learn how to protect themselves and become more spiritually present as well. So even the scarier things have been good learning experiences, I guess.
Right.
It's
Okay.
true,
So you had the astral experience. Is this something you still advocate now? Do you encourage people to astral travel and have journeys that way?
I don't encourage people to do anything because I know how dangerous all of it is. So I tell people, if you're going to do this, do it. And it's awesome. And you can do it safely and well. But don't do it don't go just dabbling, because you don't know what you're going to pick up. You don't know what you're going to invite. If you don't know kind of the rules and how it works, and you haven't really thought about it and decided that's what you're willing to sort of jump into and risk, don't do it.
Yeah.
You mentioned spirit walking as well. Now, is spirit walking the same thing as an astral projection to you, or there's some kind of difference there?
I have it might be more akin to really deep meditative states for people, as far as helping people understand what it is. And I call it ceremonial space. And I just go into that usually in service of other people. And so in that space, you encounter spirits, only spirits. And so it's a little different because there's no hard and fast sort of reality. Look, like when you're astral traveling, everything's exactly like this, but different, but the same. Right.
Right.
It's hard to explain.
It's a little deeper level of it,
Yes.
right?
And you can see entities and experience them there too, like we saw in the experience I had. But it's just a different way of doing it.
Yeah. And that's very interesting. The idea of astral projection, or not the idea of it, but the reality of it has existed for centuries. It goes through different cultures. The ancient Egyptians called the soul Ba, and I had a picture I wanted to share, a hieroglyph of showing the soul above the body in the ancient Egyptians. But thank you, my software is not showing it. But it has existed through Chinese cultures. It's existed through cultures around the world. People experience these things.
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of our listeners have had lucid dreams and or intentionally astral projected or spirit walked, and I know that for a fact for some of them out there.
Yes.
Where do you stand on this? Is something that people should practice? You just warned them. Silver cord, does that play a role in your reality?
I've never had the silver cord. I don't know why.
So I'm going to go with you with that. But almost like every book in astral projection talks about that silver cord, and boy, don't cut that cord, boy. That's it. You're dead.
Bye-bye.
You're dead.
Are we dead then? So
I have to see the damn thing. And I had a lot of experience, especially in middle school, with astral projection. I had a cassette tape. I'm going to date myself here, of self-hypnosis, guided meditation. And I use this thing relentlessly and had lots of experiences and still do occasionally, but it seemed easier then for some reason.
Yes.
I don't know why that is.
It is much easier.
Do you have any in that? Because your experience was pretty early too.
Yeah. And I a lot of people have attributed the reason why that age, especially because I was also middle school and early high school when these things were sort of peaking for me, to our hormonal development. We have a lot of energy just like flooding us all the time. And so we have a lot we can do with that. And it sucks because if we were trained, if we had a culture that acknowledged these things, like so many cultures still do, then we maybe could have done really cool, amazing healing things for ourselves and other people with all of that. But instead, we were just food sources for negative entities because we had no idea what was going on and how to protect ourselves. And, you know, this is one of the reasons why I caution people. It's not to scare them. I think everybody should do this if they want to, but I think they should do it knowingly, again, of the risks. And then also knowing that really that your belief is maybe beyond and deeper than your thoughts. So you can tell yourself, oh, I think that this is true. But what you actually believe is what's going to manifest for you. So if you don't believe you can protect yourself and you don't believe you have the power to kick something out, it's going to be a lot harder for you.
You're screwed. Yeah.
So, and this is also why people with a lot of unhealed trauma shouldn't probably mess around with a lot of these things until they've healed their trauma, because your trauma is a core sort of belief-ish. You know, it's like a construct that's deep inside of you, and you don't really have control over it if it's unhealed, and that's a trigger for you. And all these entities know that, and they know your traumas and your triggers, and so they know how to put you in situations that will make you feel helpless and vulnerable, and your feeling of helplessness and vulnerability is dangerous in those types of places. So I just, you know, I suggest if people are going to try things like this, that they be already pretty at peace with themselves and already pretty healed, and knowing their power and accepting their power as a responsibility that they have. And having said all of that, I always know that we're surrounded by way more positive energies and entities, which I call allies. Our allies are all around us all the time, and there's way more of them than there are any of these dark things trying to mess with us or anything. So if you are ever in a jam and you want to, you can call in Jesus or whatever ally you believe in, and it's right there with you. You know, no, it's never going to not be there if you call.
You're right. I was going to ask you, because there's like a warfare going on. It's like
spiritual
warfare, yeah, between the dark and the light.
Yes.
And I'm glad.
Do you believe in that there is this battle between good and evil that is ongoing?
I know there is, because I had these dark entities attack me frequently, and I have met and experienced working with angels and other entities of the light that are there to fight back against them. And so in my experience, that's just fact. There just is a battle going on. But I don't believe that it's how we perceive battles necessarily. I don't think it's like God is those angels and Satan, God is devils, and they're just like fighting and clashing all the time. Right. It's this internal struggle over the human soul. And so when you look at it that way, it's really an internal war that's always going on.
Battle. I find that fascinating. Now, we've had guests that told us that they fight with like literal swords and this kind of thing. And we have a question out in the audience I want to bring up, because this is a whole nother way to look at this. Is this Joey Mad Dog? I'm sure that's your real name, Joey. Say hi to Mrs. Mad Dog for us. Sounds alternative shadow self. And he mentioned a couple comments about the shadow self. And we talked about Jungian theory about a person in their shadow, which kind of is this light and dark. And I would take it to like a psychological perspective, but yet we see in our astral selves the reality of it, what is dark, what is light, this sort of thing. How much of it do you think is purely mental and just part of the human condition?
In one way, all of it, and in another way, none of it. So I just look at it like this. You know, people say often, oh, that was just you and that was your own dark, like whatever, and you're projecting it and you have to battle it and come to peace with it and heal it. Well, you do have to do all those things, and you do have a shadow, and it's definitely 100% of your traumas and your unexplored wounds that are within your soul and your emotional and mental bodies. Those are all portals. Those are all doorways that are wide open for darkness to come through. So you are creating this, and it is of you, and you are responsible for healing it and closing all those doors. And that's the primary goal of any human, I would say, is to heal exactly those things. But I just look at it this way too. So technically, if we want to get really woo with it, we can say, well, all of life is us and all things are us. And all of this is just us meeting us and talking to us and like over and over again in different ways. But I still would shoot someone who was running towards me with a gun. Right.
Right.
So I don't care what that shadow being is really. I'm still going to protect myself against it. And so I have a problem with people who take that. I don't have a problem with the people. I have a problem with the idea that you should like rush into the shadow and embrace it. I think a lot of damage and danger is there for misunderstanding what these things are and what they can do to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it is an interesting concept to look at that as a whole and say, well, all right, is spiritual warfare really just in my head and me battling my shadow self? And I'm actually projecting or creating these entities that are attacking me.
Here's how that is true, because if 100% of human souls were healed, there would be no war, there would be no darkness, and there would be no battle. So it is true that it is just us creating this and projecting it, but that doesn't mean, again, that it's not real or that it's not something that you protect yourself against, again, just like you would if somebody was rushing at you with a sword.
Exactly.
Yeah, or traumatic, right? So, yeah, that's interesting because the human condition, you know, we spend all this time in our heads. We don't always understand, even no matter how good we might be at telepathy or these other kind of contact modalities or whatever they are. You're still in your mind and there's still some like missing piece, you know, and then we need other humans to put together those missing pieces to more fully understand ourselves.
Yes.
So, you know, we're all kind of like pieces of a puzzle in a way.
Yeah, that is true. And I also, that whole idea of our internal wounds and our internal traumas and these being sort of doorways and, you know, access points for, or at least creation points for negativity in our lives and in our world is, and, you know, a lot of people don't realize that if they're doing things like tarot or like pendulums or, you know, these different sort of divination methods, Ouija boards, any of these things, that if you have that, it is blocking whatever's coming through and or influencing the energetic quality of whatever's coming through. So people will say things like, well, I use my pendulum and it tells me this, and why isn't that actually real? Why isn't that actually what's happening? It's like, well, if you're using this, for example, I had someone tell me, you know, my pendulum told me that this person is my soulmate. And so I'm literally going to, against their will, show up at their house and like profess my love. And I'm like, whoa, no. Against their will. Like they don't want you to come. They're not in love with you. But my pendulum told me they're my soulmate. I'm like, yeah, but that's your dark internal struggle coming through this pendulum. And you're telling yourself that that's your soulmate because you really want it to be your soulmate. Right. So the level, you can't have very good objectivity if you have a lot of internal struggle and wounds and trauma. And that most people do have those. And I think that's part of why people say things like, well, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? I'm like, well, you can. You may have a lot of work to do before it's really clear and really pure. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost a way to, I'm sorry, Kristen, to define your subconscious, because, you know, they want this on such a deep level. It is their subconscious moving the pendulum and through neuromuscular ways. There's a term for that, but I can't think of it right now. But you have that thing laying across your finger and you have the most tiniest muscles that some part of you is moving it, no matter how still you think your hand is.
Dowsing rods, same thing.
You know, and the same thing, dowsing rods and a lot of divination, you know, and your interpretations of things can go that way. So that's a great point. But you could, it's within you, and you're not necessarily correct about their lives. You could be the last thing they want.
True.
My pendulum said, no, I don't give a rat's ass about your pendulum. I'm sorry. You can leave now. You know, that kind of thing.
I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you want to say this or not, answer it, but being under the influence, do you feel that it was opening better or worse? How do you feel about that when somebody's under the influence?
100% being high or drunk in any way is a portal for these things to come through, especially for the people who are not aware of that which is most people.
I think
So
alcohol is a terrible
Yeah.
way to introduce yourself to the spirit world.
Yeah.
And boy, they will walk through that door. But
Yeah, they will.
Other drugs maybe give you more insight. Now, we're not anti-drug or
No.
drinking or anything here. We're very open. This open show. So
yes.
um,
Well, it's
use
just
that.
like you can look at it the same as astral projection and astral travel, right? If you're going into astral travel somehow with a lot of, you know, warped energy and like unclear things, like weird stuff's going to happen to you and weird things are going to be attracted to you. But if you're going in with pure and clear and you know what you're doing and why you're doing it and all of this, it's going to be a lot different, right? And it's the same with being high or drunk or whatever in, you know, real life too. If you're a very intelligent person who's clear and you understand and you want to use this drug for a purpose and you set out with that intention and you're going to like go deep or heal some things with it, there's a lot of plant medicines and things that help people with that, and there's a lot of shamanic tools that are used in that way as well. But most people are doing it unconsciously. Most people are doing it to like they want to get away from themselves, right? Like so you have that intention. I want to get away from myself, and I'm going to get high and open this portal. Something else is like, okay, you can get away from yourself. I'll come through. Like,
let's talk about some of those plant medicines a little bit and the shamanic experience of like peyote and mushrooms and ayahuasca. And, you know, I'm not sure if you know, comfortable talking about experiences with them, but we're open to it, and I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think almost anything can be used in a spiritual purpose or a positive purpose, right? So everything is like a neutral tool. So you have even cocaine could be used for surgeries and different things, right? There's always something positive to any one of these drugs. And then there's also the side that it can be abused and misused and whatever. And so, you know, acid is the same and mushrooms are the same and peyote is the same. And it's about set and setting, of course, as we've heard our gurus tell us so often. But it's also about, again, like the intention and the dosage amounts as well. And the respect you come with too, because I think it's if you come with this like, oh yeah, I can do so many mushrooms and eat so many, and I'm gonna like go on this total trip and like find the spirit of the universe or something. It's like the mushrooms will be like smack you down, like take a little ego trip there, like have a break.
You're gonna have a really bad trip. Yes. Yeah.
So I think there's a bit of all of that going on, but I don't use anything. I don't even drink coffee right now because the further I've gone, the more sensitive I've become. You know, because I've worked on opening my spiritual channels and being, you know, again, intentionally in alignment with this and intentionally a channel for this. And so when you're doing that and then you try to maybe like drink a couple beers, like it's way worse what will come through if you're not, again, very, very careful. And I get sick of being very, very careful. There's no fun in it anymore. It's like, So I don't even use marijuana anymore. And again, I say that, but I would use those things. I would especially use like marijuana or psilocybin or various entheogens if I needed to do so for a spiritual purpose, for spiritual work I was doing, and it somehow needed to have that sort of extra boost and deeper connection.
Yes.
But I don't find so far that I've ever needed that. So I also know that those things can be, again, used super therapeutically and very well for healing your emotional and mental traumas and breakages. So, you know, if you know how to do that, you go in with that intention, and that can be this really nice, almost shortcut through years and years of therapy, or, you know, whatever else you might have had to do to heal some of those things. So they're beautiful gifts.
That shadow
Very,
self and
very true.
put some things to rest that, you know, maybe look at it from a different perspective.
I mean, they've been doing that for thousands of years. So yeah,
I do think you can invite spirit and invite, you know, I haven't done DMT before, but an awful lot of people are saying this, seeing the same entities under that experience.
Yeah, I haven't either. I actually went because I have a feeling, you know, for me at least, I have to be invited to it. I don't want to seek it out myself. And if I'm invited to it in a way that I can tell is my soul's synchronicity drawing me towards it, then I am open to doing it. And I've told, all my spiritual allies and myself that. And so I went to Ecuador actually to see, I don't know, maybe it'll happen while I'm here. I'm not going to, again, go seeking it, but I'm going to be around. I'm going to be in the jungle. I'm going to be on, on the river, and we'll see what happens. And no, in fact, everything aligned to push me away from that. So, I'm
Was
not,
that ayahuasca? Was that where you're going?
yeah. If
that.
it all aligned that way.
Yeah.
So
that was a good thing, though, that you knew,
maybe it was not the right time
right.
to have that experience.
I might never need that experience because from what people describe, I'm like, done that, been there. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So though, I'm not closed off to it. Like, I'm open to the possibility.
Circling back to spirit attachment, there are a good deal of people that dedicate their lives to the removal of these spirits.
Yes.
And this is a very real thing to you, right? Yes. People like Edith Fiore with her book, The Unquiet Dead, Dr. Terrence Palmer's work in recent years, very interesting individual. I've had the pleasure of messaging back and forth about that. And of course, people like Carl and Anna Wicklund from the Spiritualist movement, where Carl was chief psychiatrist at I forget the exact name of the place, but it was Chicago Institute of Mental Health, or it was like basically a sanitarium, the biggest sanitarium in Chicago back in like the early 1900s. And they would go and you had a medium, you had them, they would talk through removing the spirit as being a cause of psychiatric issues, and apparently had very good results. He wrote a book, I think in 1924, called 30 Years Among the Dead. What do you think of that? What do you had this problem, you willed it away, it went away. Do you think a lot of schizophrenia or mental illness in today's world is caused by spiritual attachments?
Absolutely. I'm not familiar with any of the people you listed, but in my own experience, I can see, especially, so I can see people's auras, but I can also see, therefore, when they have an attachment, because the human aura is, in my view, the way I see auras, I have never seen a human aura that has black in it unless there's an attachment. So if I look at someone and they have black in their aura, then I know that they have an attachment, and those people are almost always turn out to be schizophrenic or deeply unwell in other ways. And I've had someone on my show on Rogueways named Jerry Marzinski, who you might want to have on your show too. He's really amazing, and he's super open to doing interviews. And he was also in the psychiatric industry, I guess, and treating a lot of psychiatric patients. And he has some amazing stories that just prove without a doubt that these things are paranormal and that they're malevolent, and that if you can get them detached and to go away, the psychiatric problems release and end. But I always have the little holdout. Again, I'm a skeptic and I'm super rational, actually. And so I have like this little bit that I'm like, well, maybe there's also just sort of physical, material causes for some of these things. Especially we see like in psychopathy that there's often a frontal lobe damage that happens. And so I can accept that that's also happening. I just, from my experience, personally, especially with auras and understanding how to sense these things, that is what causes, I want to say, 97% of what we call mental illness, depression, and anxiety.
Wow.
Interesting.
97%. Goodness.
Yeah, I'm a little bold in that statement, but that's what I experience.
In your experience with viewing auras, how do you feel about things like Kirlian photography or pictures?
Auras look nothing like they look in Kirlian photography to me, and they look nothing like what it's not Kirlian photography they do at like those aura booths, right? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Those also look nothing like what I see. If I look at the picture that came out for the person and I'm watching their aura as they're taking it, like it doesn't look anything the same. But I also know that I've talked to other people who see auras, and we don't even say the same things. We have the same conclusions we come to based on what we see, but we're not seeing the same thing. So it tells me that it is not, again, a physical manifestation, and therefore you're seeing it through whatever you want to call your third eye or your imaginatory perception. And so that's your lens, right? As objective as you can get, it's still your lens. So what does the color red mean to me? It might mean something totally different to you. So when I see red, I know what it means, but you might see it as green because that's the color that means that for you.
Right. It's like talking about chakra colors and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Come to learn. I mean, it's established what they are, and it's in every book, but you don't have to use it that way. I've worked with groups where we will talk about a certain chakra, say, the crown chakra, if you want to read someone, and they determine what color it is, and we all focus on that color, and it works.
Yeah.
And then you get the insight. It didn't necessarily follow what the manual said, if you will.
Well, and different systems have different chakra systems. There's the system that I practice most frequently with is a 5 chakra system, and the colors are nothing like that 7 chakra rainbow system that most people are more familiar with. And who knows how many more there are. Different ancient traditions have different views and different reasons for attributing different colors to different spaces in your body.
Absolutely. Now you do tarot readings for people.
Yes, as weird as that might seem to people after that story, I do.
Somehow you came back to it.
Yeah, well, you know what you're doing now.
We're gonna do this again and do it for other people. But I think that's wonderful, and I actually like those tools. I like tools of divination, and I think all these things. If you're a paranormal investigator and you have a recorder, you can call it what it is. It's necromancy, and from medieval times, it's opening portals. If you're asking spirit to speak into a box of any kind,
yep,
you're doing the same thing as playing with a Ouija board. So don't hate on the Ouija board. Tell us about your tarot readings. And
I actually was called back to tarot, and as much as I wanted to resist it because I was scared, I understood, and I had learned so much by then that I understood how to protect myself, and that I could, just like I could use it as a portal for darkness, I could use it as a portal for light, or whatever you want to call the good stuff in the universe, right? And so I did pick it back up again. I picked up the exact same deck. Like I said, I've only ever used one deck, and it's this Handel deck that you can see if you're watching. And so I, for how many decades, have been doing readings with this deck, and I love it, and I see how much it can help people transform themselves and uplift themselves and heal themselves, and that makes it a beautiful tool for me, and I'm really grateful to be able to do that with people.
Sweet.
That's excellent. And where should they go to get those tarot readings? Not that we're wrapping things up, you've got more to talk about, but I just want to make sure people
if
hear.
If you want any of my services, which includes tarot readings and ceremonial work and healings and blessings and all kinds of stuff, you could go to rogueways.org.
Excellent.
Sorry, I was just looking for something. Yeah, I do have some tarot cards. I have the Aleister Crowley cards. The OTO cards are up there on the shelf somewhere.
May I ask you a question? You said Jerry, what's his last name?
Marzinski.
Marzinski. Thank you.
Super cool guy, great guest, and really, really amazing stories.
We'll watch him. Yeah, we'll watch you guys.
We'll look out for
awesome.
him.
Yeah.
For him.
Thank you.
What do you recommend where people should start out if they're interested in this stuff, if they're interested in divination, they're interested in straightening out their lives, they've tried other things, they need some kind of other outside help? What do you recommend they do?
I think you should always trust your instincts. So I had the best advice ever given to me a long time ago by my first shamanic teacher, who said to me, choose your teacher based on where they're at and what their life is like. If you look at them and you say, yeah, I want to live that life exactly as you're living it, or I would be happy to if that's what happened to me, then that's probably a good teacher, right? And I'd say the same for choosing a healer. So I do healing. Millions of other people do healings, all kinds of practitioners, all kinds of traditions, all kinds of ways of doing it. None is better than the other. And what it really comes down to is who are you drawn to, and who do you look at and say, yeah, I like that person. I like their attitude. I like where they've come to in their life. Like, I would not choose, for example, a doctor who maybe was suffering from like lung disease and cancer. So I say like, you might not know medicine that well if this is like where you're at. And it's
Right.
the same with your spiritual healers and teachers. You know, if you look at them and you like their energy and you like where they're at, then that's probably a good person to trust and go with. You know, so yeah, if that is how you feel having talked or listened to me, then I'm happy to help you, and you can reach out. And like I said, there's so many people who do various modalities of healing work and energy work and spiritual work and guidance. Not a lot of people do dark entity detachment like I
No,
like
they
I
are
do.
out there.
Yeah,
it's called
we-
SRT, Spirit Rescue Therapy. There are
Mhm.
spirit rescue mediums out there. There is kind of a growing thing, but it's been around for a long time.
Yes. It's just
It's
as ancient
also
as
past
any of our
life
other
regression
traditions.
hypnosis,
Yes.
which brings me to a question in our audience. Our friend Robert Honing asks, mentions that I am currently working on accessing my Akashic records of past lives. Thoughts on reincarnation or hypnotherapy?
Yeah, I have had spontaneous recall of I think it's 5 now. It might be more past lives. So I know for me that exists. When I do a ceremony for people, oftentimes their past lives come up, and we do work with that. And you know, and sometimes it's also or more like a soul retrieval is what most people might call it. And so I know that exists. If you're asking how you access that, I'll say that I don't believe it's great to go to somebody and ask them to go find your past life for you unless you're doing it as a healing modality. A lot of people will tell you all kinds of things like, oh, in your past life, you were blah, blah, blah. And it's always very happy and shiny and good. And that's neat. And maybe that's true even. But what does it really matter to you? Did you experience it? Did you recall it? And if not, who cares? It's just somebody saying something to you. Then it could be true. It could be not true. I have no idea. But when you experience it yourself, the reason for it, in my experience, again, all 5 times or more that I've recalled the past life, it has been exceptionally and profoundly traumatic, very negative experiences. And there's a reason for that. And it's because at those points in my life, I was at a place, just like when you're doing like a cleanse for your body, if you're doing like a juice cleanse or something, you have these old physical traumas that come up to be healed. And you're like, oh, my elbow really hurts. Oh, that's because I hit it on the thing when I was 12 or whatever. You know, these old wounds come up to be healed. And the same thing happens in our spiritual progression and in our emotional and mental progression. When we get to places where we're like, okay, I finally have this space. It's not conscious, right? But when we finally have this space and this time and we are capable of dealing with the trauma, it comes back to be healed. So, you know, I dealt with my trauma on this life first. And then I started having, as I did that, more and more past lives come up to also be healed. And they were very, again, traumatic and horrible. And so there's a purpose for it. And it's a good purpose. And it has only helped me in my life understand what's happening in this life and why it's happening. Because all your past life stuff is repeating in this life if it's not done yet. Like if you haven't healed it and solved it yet, it's going to keep going. So it's been really profoundly healing and good for me in this life to open up all sorts of new abilities, connections, and just general upliftment. For clearing those past things. So I say the same thing as I say with everything else. You can go do anything you want. And there's nothing dangerous about trying to retrieve a past life. I just don't know the point unless it's going to be something that you're actually doing something with, you know, like healing or like understanding a deeper pattern in your current life.
Do you think that is the purpose of our lives, and that we reincarnate until we finally learn some deeper lesson?
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's a lesson so much as it's learning what cause and effect is, you know, which is what karma is. Karma literally just means cause and effect. And I don't think it's necessarily like someone's like, you better learn your lesson. Like we're punishing you. Go back again until you get it right. It's that we have free will and we chose this thing. And here's the natural consequence to that thing. You chose that. Like, here it is. Here's all the energy that comes with that. Here's all the emotion and the creations you made. Here's all the people you hurt or whatever. And you are those people, again, if we get to that highest view of things. And so you have to experience it. You have to. That's cause and effect. You did experience it, so you're going to experience it.
Right.
So I don't like to look at it as the idea of a lesson, because I feel like it feels really punitive, and I don't know. Like that's just not.
Yeah, I understand. I feel the same way. It almost seems a little hokey, right?
Yeah.
But like, what did I do bad to like end up, having
Like
to answer this question in
yeah.
this lifetime? And why did I do the bad thing in the last lifetime if I was supposed to do it to begin with?
That's one of the key things that's been really insightful for me in my past life memories, as well as to understand what I call evil in this life, I've done in other lives. And so I go back and I experience that, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I did that. This is probably why other people are doing these same things. So I have unfortunately, I don't even want it, but I have this compassion for people who are doing these horrible things, because I've literally experienced it now and still have this point of view at the same time. And the merging of those has been really powerful for me, because I have a lot. Again, I don't even like that I have it, but I have compassion for some pretty awful things, because I've done those things and I've been those things. And I'll share a story if you'd like to hear it.
Yes, I'm really curious about where you were like an actor.
Just say hi to our friend Gail Hyson, which is a mutual friend of ours. My favorite podcast, People, Giant Hugs and Kisses. And it's awesome that you know Gail. We love Gail as well.
She's awesome.
Her podcast is Small, Medium at Large. Look for that on YouTube, because it really is awesome.
She's a beautiful soul.
Very beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm just waiting for this. Were you, like I said, were you axe murderer? I mean, I'm being silly, but goodness.
No, it was pretty close. This was the hardest one, actually. This was my most recent recollection. I think that's not true. I think I've had one more since then, but anyways, one of my more recent ones. So the heaviest ones came out last, I think, but excuse me. I had recall of a life where I was torturing people and really enjoying it, and super angry and aggressive, and really, really sure that I was doing this for good somehow. Like somehow my love of torturing these people was serving, like I couldn't really pull out what it was, but it felt like a kingdom or like a cause, like a religious or political cause, or like a country, like I was doing this for that, and it was like a noble thing.
Dexter thing. Yeah.
Well, no, it was more like these are the people who were trying to like stop our movement and momentum in this political way or whatever. And so we have to get the information out of them, and we have to stop them. So here I am doing that, and that's a good thing, right? I'm serving my whatever king, but I enjoyed it. Yeah. I enjoyed it. And at some point though, in that life, after seeing the most horrible things ever and realizing how awful and horrible I was, which is hard, when you're in these experiences, and if you go too deeply into rejecting it, it will end and you won't get what you can out of it. And so to stay present with it is actually really difficult. It's kind of like what we were talking about, being really objective and open is actually really difficult sometimes, because we're really attached to things. And one of the things I'm really attached to is that I would never torture anything, like for any reason. So that was hard to accept, but I knew 100% that was me and that I was doing this. And at some point in it, though, I came to understand somehow that like this wasn't just, that things weren't just like meat and bones, and it wasn't just mechanical, and that there was actually like spirit or spiritual energy, like that just dawned on me as I was like torturing someone. And I realized then like what that meant, if that was true. And that meant that all the people I'd ever tortured was like, I was actually damaging more than just, again, like a meat puppet, or like, like I had this just profound understanding, and it broke me. And then I went out and was suicidal because I had done all these awful, terrible things. And I finally understood like the gravity of it and what it actually meant. And then it got even weirder because I now was then talking to me then as both of me, which is the weirdest thing I have ever experienced, I believe, actually, out of all the weird things. It was really, really strange to both like be talking as me now and hearing as me then, and like experiencing. But I was trying to get me then to not kill myself, because suicide at that point would have made things even worse. and darker, and that if I could stay alive with the new understanding I had, actually more could be released and we could get sort of further in our mutual one actually spiritual path. And it was really, really intense. And I came back to this life and I was crying and it was horrible. And I had this really bad day because you experience again, like it's you. And so me now experiencing myself torturing people is not a pleasant time. You know, it doesn't just go away when the experience ends. You really, like, it sits with you just like it would if you experienced it. And so it took a while for me to really get through that and sort of heal from that. But one of the things I realized is that you know, and it took me a while to connect these two things for some reason, but in this life, in reality, as a small child, when I was 5, I was tortured by a dentist. And I always was like, why did that happen to me? Like, it was awful torture. Like, he was evil. Like, he enjoyed it and he did it on purpose, and it was ongoing. And every time I went back to the dentist, I had to go do it again. And it was really, this is where my initial trauma in this life really,
terrible.
It was terrible.
And you feel like
he
did not give you enough pain medication to,
he didn't give me any
Novocaine or whatever it was, or the gas or
he
whatever.
gave me nothing.
No.
He gave me nothing, and he would drill on every tooth, even if it wasn't cavities. And then, and I would tell them, like, it hurt so bad and I hate this. Why do I have to do this? But every kid says that. Every kid does that. So it didn't seem like to them, like, you know, so they didn't know. So I had a lot of work to do in this life, way before I even had this past life memory of healing that, forgiving my parents for not doing anything to protect me and not believing me or not understanding that it was actually really torturous and all of these things. But then I also finally understood, there is a reason why that happened to me, because I'm literally like rebalancing, if you will, the karma of having been a torturer in a past life. So I then, and I got
like that karmic balance.
And I have this weird, you know, even after I went through PTSD therapy for that experience, I still didn't have real forgiveness for that man. I just had a sort of peace with the situation in general. But after this, I actually did have real forgiveness for him. And I actually did release even more of that trauma by having that actual compassionate forgiveness as a true, emotion.
Wow.
It's very big of you, even if it really is for a selfish gain, because you want the release and you want to let it go from you. You know, you're not forgiving him to make him feel better in any way, but still, you know, I have a couple of books behind me on that bookshelf that are all about fixing problems like that. On a sorcery level.
Sorcery.
Yeah.
Well, and I just imagine if I had been older and I had been the old me that was very aggressive and super willing to fight and all these things, and he had done anything like that to me, I don't know what I would have done, but that would have just kept it going. We would have just kept cycling around again and again and again. We're both just going to keep like stabbing each other until when, you know. So at some point you have to just, like you said, it's actually better for me to release this and forgive you. Whatever happens to you, I don't care. You know, if you can get to that point though, where you genuinely forgive someone for having harmed you, like there is no more deeper release than that. You can fake it till you make it, and that'll help a lot too. But when getting to that point where you actually are like, yeah, I really do forgive you. I really
in your heart. Yeah. It's just like,
literally bury your past, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
You used this word, this was in your bio, and I think we mentioned it earlier, synchro-mysticism.
Yes.
And I know this is related to the collective unconscious, some Jungian thoughts, and can you tell us about that and what does that mean to you?
To me, it means having synchronicities that are so profound and common in your life that they guide you through experiences that otherwise don't seem possible to other people. So they're a bit mystical. So many times in my life, things have aligned and coincided in such a way that doesn't make sense to the rational worldview, and have also led to some of the most profound experiences of my life and biggest life changes and and maybe deepest sort of calls to my path and the work that I do.
We're a big fan of synchronicity.
Yes.
I think it was Carl Jung that coined that term. Yeah, synchronicity and what it means. And certainly we've seen it played out in shows like Hellier, referred to synchronicity a lot.
Yeah.
And Kristen and I love it because we always have these little synchronicities between ourselves.
Since we were younger, actually.
Since we were kids early through our lives.
Oh.
We didn't even know.
It's fun and neat. But how does this relate to what you do?
Well, like I said, it's really called me deeper into my path in ways that I don't think I would have gotten there without them, without the synchronicities. So I can tell
some of the ones that were more profound and turned your life.
Yeah, this one is probably my favorite and was the hardest, but I had been long since trying to quit teaching and not succeeding because I have a really giving, bleeding heart and I loved children and helping them. And so I didn't want to leave because they need me, you know, but it's a horrifying system. And I really despise the educational system and everything that it does. So it's always been a really big drain on me to be a part of it as well. But this had been going on for years. And I was just at this point where I was just sort of feeling like, I'm not sure I've reached every goal I have. Like I have the highest pay I've ever had. I have this beautiful career. I've been at the same, school district for all these years. And I'm in the school that I want to be at and teaching the classes I want to teach. And I have this wonderful partner. He's like good to me and he's not abusive like a lot of the other ones had been. And I have this house that I literally manifested. And there's a whole story behind that too.
Oh, wow.
My car and all these things. And I just like have the life that I always wanted. And I've arrived. So like, what now? But why do I feel like it's not the life I always wanted? Or like, why do I feel sort of off? Or like there's something else I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
So I went, as I often do, to the forest to contemplate and meditate and ask and, see what happened. And I just ended up on this random trail. I didn't really plan on that trail. It was just the one I picked as I was driving through, the mountains where there's thousands of trails, and walk and there's a river. And then I get to a waterfall and I'm like, oh, cool. Waterfalls are like the best place to like have this energy. There's like some liminal space there. And it's just a really good. So I went and sat by this waterfall and no one was around. It was perfect. And so I was sitting there and I was like, okay, what should I do? God, source, whatever you want to call this. I don't really care. And I really clearly heard and felt like you need to go further down up the river to your left. And I was like, did I really feel or hear that? Like, this is before I really received messages that easily, or, and I was like questioning, like, is that really a thing? And then this, like bird flew by and was like going to the left and like landed on this rock and was sort of like peeping at me. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to go over there. So I get up and I walk over there and then I'm like, okay, I'm here now. And it's like, nope, keep going around and across. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, is that really, or should I just stop here and sit and meditate for a while? And then this like dragonfly comes by and it's like goes over and sits like where I was just told to sort of go. I'm like, okay, I am supposed to go over there. So I go over there and I'm like, okay, now I'm here. And it's like, no, still a little bit more. There's like another little like waterfall coming down and a little like pond sort of thing. And you need to go to the other side of that. And I'm like, this is like really clear instructions. Like, am I crazy or is this really happening? And like another like bird or something like flew to that exact spot. I'm like, okay. So I went over there. Wow. So I sit down and I'm like, okay, now I'm in the spot, right? And it's like, yes, you're in the spot. And I'm like, okay, what now? And it's like, look down. And I look down and there's just a knife and it's just open. And it's sitting right in front of me. And and that's weird enough. I'm like, wow, who just leaves an open knife just sitting on a rock at this place where not many people would go? Because I was like told to like kind of climb back in here. It's not on the trail. Someone just leaves this knife here. And then I remembered almost exactly a year before to the day, me and my partner had been at this lake, which I, again, had just suddenly like, I need to stop and get out of the car and walk. Let's just walk. And then I was like, I need to go over to that point way over there. And he's like, it's really cold and windy. Why are we doing this? I'm like, I just want to walk to that point for some reason. I walk to that point. And there's a knife open and laying in that point. So almost exactly a year before this to the day, there had been a knife open and laying on a rock, just like there was a knife open and laying on a rock. And I was like, what?
What is this? The symbolism of the knife?
So I asked myself, what does this actually mean? And it was saying to me, we have to cut it all off. And I was like, cut what all off? And I didn't want to accept the answer, but the answer was my whole life. I had to cut off my teaching. I had to sell my house. I had to sell my car, and I had to leave my partner, and I had to go on a grand adventure and drive around the North American continent for a while by myself in
like
a van.
rebirth. You had to cut
Yes.
the cords
Yeah.
of your current existence and have a sort of spiritual rebirth.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I was like, why this knife and why that time? Why did I find it that first time and now again today? And it was and that first time that I had found it, I was the most hungover I'd probably ever been. I was my highest weight I'd ever been, and I was super sick, and I had just had like a horrible weekend because of my own alcohol abuse. And part of that, at least, was I don't want to blame my partner, but we were in it together. You know, like we were we were both getting trashed and doing whatever and not being very good to ourselves. And so as much as he was a beautiful soul and we're still very good friends, you know, that relationship had an energy that was stagnant, and we had both gotten what we needed out of it. And I just wasn't ready to admit that. And if I hadn't done this little sojourn into the woods and found that knife, I don't think I would have broken up with him and left my job and sold my house and done all that. But I had more synchronicities after that like confirmed it again and again and again, because, you know, I had to be in denial for a while and really like, are you sure? Like, come on, like this can't be what I'm supposed to do. But man, trusting that type of synchronicity chain, and you know, those events and those times where you're getting these deep messages and you do understand them, even if you don't want to, if you really follow through, I mean, that's when my life completely transformed. And that's, you know, now I'm here again doing what I really came to Earth to do, which is spiritual healing work and everything else I do now.
I find that so fascinating because the knife meant something to you. So again, there's that spirit communication through symbolism, right?
Yes.
So that twice you see an open knife, it means something to you. You look at it, you interpret that as like, oh, I need to cut all these things, cut these cords around through my life. Another person would say, well, that's just weird. Why is there a knife on a rock?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, maybe I should go fillet a fish or something.
Right.
Yeah. Give me back my fillet of fish.
Don't start fun and games until you choke on a fillet of fish and pee the bed.
Yeah. Well, see, this is exactly like
that seems random, but means something.
It was, but it's a private joke.
Thanks for sharing. Hey, it wasn't me.
Well, I'll say that symbolism plucked straight from my brain and put on that rock in the form of a knife is exactly like the earlier demonic, you know, oh, she has this affinity for this little girl shape and like, you know, that sort of thing. And so just like I said earlier, your allies, your spirits of light, your whatever, your good energies are all around you all the time, and they have the same abilities. They can take things from your mind. They know everything you think and do and all of your past and future.
Yeah. Actually, Thursday we were talking about alien abduction phenomena quite a bit, and one of the things that turns up in a lot of the phenomena, I hear this talked about by people like Grant Cameron and others, is that the aliens have actually told people, and I'll put aliens in quote, that we can only show you what you know because we pull it from your brain.
Yes.
Yep.
And, you know, and there you see the crossover of phenomena, right? We're talking about spiritual phenomena, alien phenomena. You know, it's kind of all the same, and it comes through symbolism a lot of times, and stuff that you already holding there in your noggin. So
this is why
it's so fascinating.
This is why back in the day people would see aliens as airships, and we don't see aliens in airships anymore. We have new symbolism now.
Right? Yeah. Our people's perceptions of what those UFOs look like change. We were talking about a Canadian. And I forget the gentleman's name. I had it written down in front of me. Experiencer who saw a UFO, and in the way it worked, he saw two cigar-shaped objects in the sky, and they morphed into something that was more like the nuts and bolts type UFO
like
that people were used to seeing in 1967.
Right.
He sketched it, and he sat there for like a half an hour drawing it, and it looked like, you know, something the military may have had on the back lot, you know. And it was in the Hangar 18 or whatnot. And I just find that just totally fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, back in early Northern America, and the colonies were formed here, and we had the Mass Bay colonies. There was a group of people, and this is the first reported incident of UFO phenomena in the U.S. Going down, I believe it was the Muddy River, which is similar to the Charles River here up our way in Massachusetts, heading toward Boston. They were on a Boston. Did I just say Boston? I did. My accent slipped out there for a minute. Going down the river, right? And they look up in the sky and they see what looks like a flaming pig.
Yeah.
Because those are things that they know, right? They don't know what a saucer looks like with bolts and, you know, the door coming down. Take me to your leader. They don't know any of that. They just see this kind of lights in the sky and they experience this time lapse phenomena, and hours go by and they end up like way down the river and they have no idea how they got there.
Yeah.
You know, they're all staring at the flaming pig in the sky.
Missing time.
So yeah, it is a personal experience, and I can only do what our brains can put together at that time, I guess.
Yes. And if you're, you know, if you're open and you're interacting with these entities, I've seen them do crazy things that, again, if they were material, it wouldn't make sense at all. But because I know that there are spiritual entities, and I'm not opposed to, perhaps there are physical, actual aliens and ships and whatever, but I've never seen them. And I've seen thousands of, you know, what you would call UFOs. And they're always doing that same sort of stuff, like shape shifting or doing things that don't make sense materially. But I've even seen in the daylight one that was a Cessna plane flying, and then it just stopped and hovered and like turned towards me. And I was like, well, that's not possible. But I already know at this point, like, you're some kind of spiritual entity or whatever, you know, like, I don't know what you're doing. And then it just turned into like a jumbo jet and like flew a different direction.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Like
Wow.
in daylight, in broad daylight. So I'm like, well, they can do anything. They can look like anything because they're spiritual energy and because they're working with your perception and not with physical reality. Like you said, it's coming through your lens. And so I've even had experiences where, you know, when I'm working with spiritual energies on behalf of other people, they're trying to tell me things and they'll just say to me, you don't even know the word or the concept, so we can't tell you. And I'm like, well, that sucks for all of us. Like, how can we get around this, you know? And so they'll give me like a series of like images and things, and I kind of can piece it together like a puzzle and then go searching on the internet and find the thing that I didn't know about, except I was told in this way. So it really is like, you can only experience what you understand somewhat, at least, or have a frame of reference for. And then it's always going to be using your lens, your specific set of experiences, and your specific ideology.
Right. Again, like those knives on the rock.
Yeah.
So fascinating. What do you think about the idea that sometimes information is given to a person or downloaded, or however we want to put it, that kind of just leads you into these rabbit holes?
Yeah. Sometimes there's just
endlessly
tricksters.
thinking about some subject, and it's my feeling or opinion or ours that they use that psychic energy of our thoughts and concentrating it to bring themselves closer to us and our reality. But what do you think? And have you experienced that rabbit hole phenomena?
Yeah, I don't as much anymore, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And I look at it again as sort of an attack, like, you know, they're meaning to disrupt and kind of feed off of you in whatever way. But it's also, again, been a nice training for me to understand more and more how to be connected with sources that are more pure and get more accurate information that I can trust, and rather than just random endless loopholes and rabbit holes that you can fall down for no purpose at all. So it is there. And, you know, I don't even think all of these things are like so evil or dark, but it's still like annoying. It's like a mosquito. You're like, I'm sure you serve some kind of purpose, but I don't really want to deal with you.
I love that.
Yeah, it seems like they just want us to think about it. Like, I'll just give you just enough to think about and keep you guessing, keep you thinking with no logical conclusions ever materializing, except now you realize, wow, I've been thinking about this entity for weeks, and now, you know, things seem more real. We went through a certain attachment haunting thing here,
Negative.
Kristen and I,
Yes.
that seemed to be just this rabbit hole that wouldn't end, but you know, would give us enough words, enough things to just kind of like, all right, we really got to figure this out. This is important. This is important, but it wasn't important. We were the important ones to it.
Yeah,
Right.
you were feeding
were
its
exactly the
morphogenetic
energy
field.
And making it more real. And it was the only way to really banish the thing for us was to stop thinking about it, like really take time to
just
not think about it, which you know,
when we didn't, and
like
it went away.
But we were able to do it.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And a phenomena around the house stopped. So I just for people out there that are trying to banish things.
Yeah.
It's harder to do than you might think, to stop thinking about a thing that you've been thinking about for a long time.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is. But we were obsessed at that point. And I think that's where that rabbit hole thing kind of goes into a state of obsession.
Yeah. And there's a lot of danger in that as well, in this in the rabbit holes themselves and in the obsessions themselves. You know, if there's no balance in what you're doing, it's going to not serve you well. And a lot of people get really, especially I think in like the spiritual pathways and the spiritual communities, they get obsessed with like obtaining knowledge or obtaining spiritual experiences, and they just keep going. It's like a drug to them. And at this point, again, you're much more likely to send yourself into spirals and down the wrong pathways and attracting the wrong kinds of energies because it's not balanced. And I just always suggest to people, you know, you're going to find what you need when you need it, period. Unless you're forcing otherwise. Your life and your soul have a way, just like those synchronicities, just like that knife on the rock. If you're just open and balanced and just moving forward all the time with that intention that you're going to keep on your path and keep attracting what's right, it's just going to happen. And you don't have to obsessively search for anything ever. You don't, you know. And there's this quote that I really love, and it's a Khalil Gibran quote, and I'm probably going to get it wrong, but it's something like, you know, it can be revealed to a person in a single moment what has been hidden from mankind for all of time. So you don't have to rely on endless research and like memorizing everything and all of this stuff to have a profound experience or a really deep understanding come to you, or those downloads like we were talking about, that channeled information like we were talking about, that can happen to anyone at any time. And it's more likely to happen if you're balanced and you're healthy and you're treating yourself well and you're doing the things you need to be in balance and wellness. So I always like to throw that out there in general, because it is, like you said, these trickstery spirits and these sort of guys that want attention so they can have more solidity to themselves. They're sometimes behind some of those obsessive searches as well that might be really full of good information and somewhat meaningful to your life. But again, if there's not balance there, it's gonna come back at you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I do think the thoughts have some sort of weight, you know, in the spiritual world. And the more you think about something, the more you can feed it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's what manifestation is based on, right?
Right.
Yeah. How do you think manifestation actually occurs? Do you think it occurs on something like a quantum level?
Quantum level, quantum entanglement.
Yeah. I mean, I've had people say to me, because, for example, I said I manifested that house, and I really did. I sat down and I made like a picture. I'm like, this is what I want. I want to find a house just like this. I'm going to draw it. And I put all these symbols on it that mean something to me, and drew a tarot card and put that on there because that meant something to me, and all of this stuff. And I like spent time looking at it every day. And then I kind of put it away at some point and was like, I'm too busy and I'm going to be moving soon and whatever. Well, when I went finding my house, I found a house that looked exactly like that house. I didn't even realize it until after I bought the house. And someone was like, hey, didn't you draw that house a little while ago? I was like, oh my God, I did. And I pulled the drawing out and it was like exactly the house with the same dog and the same tree, and like everything was exactly the same. And I've had someone say to me, well, do you think you manifested that? Or do you think you knew, part of you knew like the future and you were just seeing the future? And my answer is, what does it matter? What's the difference? Isn't it the same exact thing? Like there's an infinite number of futures and possibilities. So didn't I just select the one in which I found that house? I don't think I'm literally creating a house with my thoughts. That's not what I think is happening. I think I am directing myself to follow the pathways that lead to the timeline in which this thing occurs that I am trying to experience.
Fascinating. Love this.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yes, it
That's
really
an
is.
amazing way to think about it.
Yeah.
What
you doing?
Those remind me of a book.
Getting another book. We're getting props.
I do.
There's always another book.
Always.
I got to find a quote. Did you want to ask that?
No, I can't find the Linkar's question.
I think
It melted my.
She was
computer
asking
melted.
if you had experienced 5D,
Or
5-dimensional, or 4-dimensional experiences.
Yeah.
And that's my mom. That's Elaine out there.
Yeah, I think that's what all of the things we've been talking about are. I think when we're talking about manifestation, when we're talking about ceremonial space, spirit walking, dream walking, astral projection, all of these things are happening in another dimension. So I'm not willing to classify which are 4 or which are 5 or which are 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. I'm not interested in the number of the dimension necessarily, but it's definitely not this reality and experience and dimension. So it's a parallel space. Yeah.
So you think of parallel and multiverse, basically.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Both and all. Because if you really think about whatever is happening here, whatever we are and whatever we're doing here, we do seem to see that there is infinite infinities. And so whether we're looking out into the galaxies or we're looking down in the atomic level, like it never stops. So I have to imagine then that there is everything all the time.
Yes, we agree.
Everything is true and nothing is real.
Yeah.
Right?
I love that you go to the forest. That's my thing as well. That's my happy place.
Yeah, that is so cool. And it's something we
Yeah.
talk about, and
A lot.
to be some kind
We
of
love
scientific
trees and
backing to just getting back to nature. Our friend Ken Allen says, I love rabbit holes, baby. Ken Allen, the Wizard Stable podcast. And I mentioned here, profound spiritual experiences do not happen while playing it safe at home. Well, you're right, Ken.
Yes,
They
you
do
are.
not. You can't play it safe. Sometimes you gotta, not
Get
go
out
with the
there.
flow. Get out
that's
there.
it.
Get to the woods. Get inside your own head.
And stop looking at your phone and look up, people. There's
That's right.
stars
That's
and
right.
Milky Way. Just look up.
It's something we mentioned last Saturday on last Saturday's show, was that if 30 years ago, I could have imagined people just walking around staring at these little black boxes in their hands. I would have thought that was a science fiction movie, but here we are, and we do it.
See, we can add to Ken's statement and say, you're never going to have a profound spiritual experience by being on your phone or on a computer.
It's very true.
Get out of the algorithm, right?
Yeah.
But, people can find you at rogueways.org, ROGUE ways, WAYS.org. You do tarot readings for people as well. And what else can they expect from that website? And how else can they reach you?
It's really
so much.
cool.
Thank you. I've worked very hard on it for many years, and there are so many things there. I have books. I think I'm at 5 now. They are mostly channeled books. There's one that's not. And there's some fiction and there's some nonfiction. And my favorite one is my newest one. It's called All Endings Are Beginnings. And it is meant to be used as an oracle. So if you purchase it from the site, you can get my inscription, which is also a channeled message to you. And maybe every day you just open it and there's, a nice passage there to give you a little boost for that day. Or you can consult it, ask a question, like I said, like an oracle, and open to a page and there will be your answer. And one of my favorite things is how many people send me their experiences using it as an oracle and how perfectly right on it was. And it's really beautiful to be a part of that. So I hope everyone goes and grabs All Endings Are Beginnings. You can also get it in all of my books on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles, but either way. And
personally, I like the personal one.
I love that.
Touch.
I love that. That's very, very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this becomes an audio podcast, so just so people know, if they're just happen to click upon this, it's an application or something like that. Your name is Lindsey Scharmyn, and it's SCHARMYN is how you spell your last name. And that is really fascinating.
Yes,
And
it
you're
is.
an author of 4 other books as well.
This was a wonderful, wonderful podcast. Insight. Loved
Yeah,
it.
lots of insight,
Oh,
lots
thank
of things.
Oh,
I think we
very
could talk another hour easy.
Yeah.
I would think we
You're gonna have to come back at
went
some
over
point.
our
Well,
6
can I-
o'clock marker.
Yeah.
Can I plug a few more things really quick?
Please
Absolutely,
do.
please do.
I just started doing guided meditations each week, twice a week with people. And so you buy it as a subscription for the month. And right now it's on special for $50. So if you go to the shop at rogueways.org, you can grab that. And I also have an event coming up. It's the 5th one of its kind. Every solstice and equinox, I lead a sort of class and immersion in deeper spiritual experience and meditation and some learning as well. And so this 19th of December, we'll be celebrating the winter solstice, and you can grab tickets to that event also on the site rogueways.org, and you can find links to my podcast. I have Rogueways and a show called Middle Path, as well as all the different communities and ways to support me. And there's even more than that, but I'll stop talking now.
It's an excellent site. You
No,
guys have
that
to go
that
to
is awesome.
You're welcome.
That is awesome. Thank you so much,
Yes,
Lindsey.
thank you, Lindsey.
Thank you.
We love having you on. This has been a true pleasure. We'd love to have you back and talk some more.
Yeah,
We'll do-
anytime.
Great.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
again. You're welcome.
And that's about all the time we have for Bigfoot and the Bunny. Is next Thursday Thanksgiving?
My goodness, yes.
Good Lord, it's Thanksgiving. We probably won't be on, but we will probably
We're gonna do a live
Do
show from our friends.
not on Thursday. We're not.
No, on Saturday.
Yeah. Baby.
Friendsgiving.
Yeah, we're gonna do Friendsgiving next Saturday.
Yep.
From James Anito's house. We're going to talk to James Anito and Carl Johnson. On Thursday night will be the actual Thanksgiving, so maybe we'll do a replay or something
Yeah.
along those lines. And yeah, we're looking forward to that. There'll be some surprises on Saturday with the Friendsgiving.
Mhm.
There's going to be a whole bunch of
A lot of
para
people.
peeps there, and some. I don't know. I guess we're eating the turkey from Thursday. I'm making new turkey, but you're making shrimp Mozambique.
I am.
So I'm looking forward to that.
I am too.
And we'll see you either way. And again, thank you for listening, whatever platform this is on, and realize that you can reach out to us again at facebook.com/Bigfoot and the Bunny if you want to communicate with us.
Thanks
you guys
again,
have a great week. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care.